Andy Katz back with me. We have talked teams, we've talked players. Andy, now let's talk coaches and the race for the Big Ten Coach of the Year. Much like everybody trying to keep up with Michigan right now, I think all the coaches are probably trying to keep up with Dusty May.
Yeah, and I thought this earlier when I had Fred Hoiberg in the pole position that the winner of Big Ten Coach of the Year was going to be the National Coach of the Year. Even though Tommy Lloyd was right there at Arizona, but now they've got injuries and they've taken on some water in the Big 12. So I feel pretty confident that whoever wins the Big Ten Coach of the Year is going to be the National Coach of the Year. And right now it's Dusty May. Dusty May, 2 years in a row, has put together, a front court that had never played together before. Now he's added backcourt players with returning players. Has managed the way that you deal with sort of 9 starters, the egos. He's got a selfless crew. They've dealt with adversity within games. They almost lost a couple to lower level teams like Penn State and Maryland. They did lose a home game to Wisconsin. And they've sort of just navigated this roller coaster of a season to this point where he's just done a phenomenal job, he and his staff, of who they picked, how they've coached them, and barring a complete faceplant, which I don't see it, they're going to be the number 1 overall seed, and I think he'll be the Coach of the Year.
Yeah, first major conference team to start 25-1 or better through their first 26 games in more than a decade. So prior to Tuesday night, you think you had Fred Hoiberg in the pole position, but perhaps Dusty just goes on the inside and passes after Nebraska's loss to Iowa. Still, you cannot overstate just how good the job that Fred Hoiberg has done this year, and I would even argue dating back to the last couple of years in Lincoln.
Yeah, for the record, this is when they were 20-0 when I said he's the National Coach of the Year at that point in the season. They've obviously lost some games. He's dealt with injuries with Braden Frager and Rick Mass being ill. But again, it's not just the pieces that have been fitting well, which they are. It's the fact that, they've changed the way they play defensively and making that adjustment to where they've locked teams down. Yeah, they only scored 52 points in this loss to Iowa, but they only gave up 57. So they're still doing a great job defensively. When they were leaning on Tominaga, who was not a great defender, it was a little different. He leaves and all the excitement of all his three-point shooting is gone. So now you got to adjust. And you bring in a shooter like Price Sanford, but still you need to lock up defensively. And what they've done with their front line, on the perimeter, Jamarcus Lawrence coming back, every piece that he's put on the floor with he and his staff and delegating, they've done a great job defensively. And he's right there. But right now, yes, I think Dusty May has passed him on the track to be Coach of the Year.
And how about another coach who's flipped the script a little bit in terms of what the personality of the program used to be, and that being Gard, because Wisconsin used to live with ball possession, playing really good defense. Gard deserves a ton of credit for being willing to go out and get players like Nick Boyd, being able to pair him with John Blackwell, and watching Wisconsin save Tuesday night's slow offensive performance, regularly dropping 80 and 90 points against some of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, let's erase the stigma. Greg Gard has certainly created his own identity here. It's not just Bo Ryan or even predating to the Bennett era. This is a team, when the personnel is there and they can make shots, they're going to score. They're going to push it up and down. For the most part, they've been they've had their better defensive moments, and sometimes they get burned the way they're playing. Obviously, go back to when they played BYU, back in Utah earlier in the non-conference. That did not go well, but when Nick Boyd and John Blackwell are on the same page and they can get some contributions from Winter inside, this is a team that's going to be very difficult to stop offensively in the NCAA tournament. And he has made those adjustments, and recruits and everyone should know you're not going to the old school Wisconsin here. You're going to a new kind of Wisconsin that likes to push the tempo. Kirk Penny gets a lot of credit. He's no longer on the staff. He went back home to his native New Zealand. But a lot of that goes back to his influence of trying to change some of the offensive philosophy, and Greg being willing to adapt and to take feedback and to go, with sort of the new thinking in where we are in the game, and sort of the three-point shot is king, and they've embraced it.
Talent evaluation also part of being a really good head coach. Brad Underwood didn't miss on Keaton Wagler when dozens of other coaches did. And Coach Underwoodovich also loves to go to Eastern Europe and get guys who other teams are not necessarily looking at. And it's really worked out well for the Illini.
Yeah, he's done a tremendous job. I mean, the Ivicevic brothers, they were highly recruited. Obviously, they were different high-level places playing for John Calipari at one point. Certainly Big Z was. So put them aside. Stojakovic obviously had a lot of hype. He was coming from Cal, but David Mirkovic was not as highly touted. Certainly Keaton Wagler was not. You had to pair them with Hemrickhouse and, of course, Kylan Boswell. So those pieces all have to fit together. And they took some bumps and lumps early in the season with a very difficult schedule. When they took on UConn on the road, that was a tough one. But beating Texas Tech at home, that Tennessee win was massive for them in terms of their confidence. And they're in a position now, when they get Stojakovic back, that they've got the personnel to get to Indy. They also, it'll be interesting to see if they can get healthy enough. I think they're the one team in the Big Ten that can beat Michigan because they can score with Michigan. And Wisconsin, when they make threes and 13 or 15 threes, they were able to beat Michigan. You're going to have to score in the 90s to take down the Wolverines. And really, it's Wisconsin when they're on, and it's Illinois. Those are the two schools that can do it in the remaining weeks of the season. And by the way, Illinois gets a chance at home against Michigan before we get to Chicago.
Let's give some credit out west to Eric Musselman. USC still in the NCAA tournament conversation, even though we didn't see Elijah Arenas play until just recently. Chad Baker-Mazara has been banged up. They get Woods coming off the couch to score 30 in one game, and now Arenas shows what he can do. I mean, this has really been kind of patchwork putting things together, but the Trojans are clearly part of the tournament talk.
Yeah, no, I think Eric Musselman gets a lot of credit because the team he thought he was going to have at the beginning of the season was loaded with Rodney Rice, Chad Baker-Mazara, and Elijah Arenas as your sort of three-headed monster. And, that would have been incredibly difficult to go against. And yet, there isn't one game where we're going to see that this season. Rice gets hurt early in Maui. Elijah Arenas doesn't get healthy enough till the end of January. And now Chad Baker-Mazara is out. So they've never had their best lineup on the floor, and yet here they are with a chance to be in the NCAA tournament. If they can just take care of business at home, they will be. So I think an outstanding job by Eric Musselman this season. We can't play the what-if game, but he's done the best of what he could with what he had.
And let's give some credit to Ben McCollum, Darren DeVries. There is not a separate award for first-year Big Ten Coach of the Year honors, but those two guys would certainly be leading. Niko Medved's done a nice job, picked up some big wins from Minnesota as well. All right.